And with the Soviets spying from above, this presented a problem.
If you had a plane up in a pylon, it was pretty hard to disguise it from satellites. There were people in the security department that felt that we couldn't let them have a peek.
So we had no way of handling the situation but taking the mock-up down off of the pole, putting it away in a hangar, and then taking it back out and putting it back up.
That made the job very difficult, very difficult. To start working on the aircraft and then have to run it back into the hangar. And then pull it out, and then put it in, and then pull it out. It gets to be quite a hassle.
Despite efforts to hide the secret aircraft, intelligence agents discovered that the Soviet Union had a drawing of the plane and had found a way to detect Oxcart.
Most of the testing that we did in the daylight, radiation from the sun would heat up everything except the shadow. If we left the mock-up stationary for a half an hour or so, it might leave a shadow that an infrared camera could pick up.
Soon, the men at Area 51 were intentionally devising fakes for the Soviets to discover.
We knew the infrared satellites were coming over, and we would draw the outline of some kind of exotic plane in front of one of the hangars. Most of them was out of cardboard. Just before the satellite got there, we'd have a couple of heaters in the rear end of it to make it receive a heat signature as though the plane had just landed. We always wanted them to think we had something that they didn't. And they would sure spend a lot of time and money to try to figure out what it was.
In Washington, ghost-like objects dart across the radar screen.
Deceptions designed to protect Oxcart fueled the rumors about Area 51.
Air Force jet fighters spend several hours chasing the objects plotted on the radar scope.
We flew 2,850 missions out of Groom Lake, Area 51, that no one knew about. The plane did not exist. And naturally, the sunlight just right, it would be spotted, and it would become a genuine UFO sighting.
General Sanford, Air Force Intelligence Director, confirms that the objects are not secret American weapons and reiterates the Air Force's obligation to investigate.
This is during the era that the Air Force was doing Project Blue Book, investigating UFO sightings. They started investigating, and all of a sudden they'd run up there against this wall of security. I said, whoa, that's a top secret mission. You got to make a cover story and forget it happened.
We have received and analyzed between 1,000 and 2,000 reports.
So Project Blue Book, the poor guys, they would have to manufacture a story to explain that sighting.
With all due respect to the Air Force, I believe that some of them will prove to be of interplanetary origin.
Air traffic controllers at the FAA had to be cautioned not to report something moving that fast in American airspace for fear of alarming people.
Airline pilots were a big troublemaker. They would see that blackbird climbing. They'd be at 80,000 feet and the airlines were at 45. And they would call down and say, you know, they'd be yelling over the air. But they'd see them. And the passengers would see them. The FBI would meet them at whatever airport they were landing at. And they just make them sign an inadvertent exposure that they wouldn't reveal what they had just seen.
But when things went disastrously wrong at Area 51, the cover-up machine went into high gear. Despite the secrecy surrounding the Oxcart, clues from an early mishap are finally coming to light decades later.
It was low-altitude subsonic engine test. We had problems with getting the engine to accelerate out to Mach 3. We flew north out of the area and got up to 25,000 feet, headed south, and we started getting into the weather. Something just wasn't feeling right. It was losing airspeed, but it wasn't indicated. Pretty soon, the airplane pitched up, went up, got inverted, and went into a flat, insipid spin. You just can't recover it. So I thought I better eject. So I ejected down because I was upside down.
Ken made the right decision and punched out.
What entered my mind then was I hate like hell to, have to bail out of that good airplane.
He landed somewhere out near Wendover, Utah.
I landed and collapsed the chute. I figured I was going to need that because I was going to probably be out there overnight and for survival, and I would use that to sleep in. My checklist had come apart, and I was starting to look and picking up some of the pages that are all classified and stamped secret. The papers that I had picked up, I just stuck them in my pocket, I guess. When a pickup truck come bouncing over across the desert, 3 guys were in the truck. Well, I was amazed to see them. They said, hey, come on, get in there. We'll take you over to your airplane. And I said, no, that's an F-105, and that was our story that we had. I said, it's got a nuclear weapon on board. They said, you better get in here. We're leaving. We're not going to stay. So I jumped in front with them. In the front, there were 4 of us in the cab. I don't know where they thought they were going to go. If a bomb went off, it's probably close enough. It wouldn't have made any difference.
After Collins' admonition, after his white lie, I don't think they were very anxious to go take a hard look at it.
We did have a phone number that we called, emergency kind of thing, and I made a 10-cent call. Identified myself, and that's all they needed to know, and I told them where I was.
That gave the agency about 2 days to go out and scrape up the pieces and clean up the mess. Otherwise, it might have been a county fair.
This is the first time photos of the government's effort to sanitize the crash scene have been revealed.
They had 2 of our survival guys that were part of the security team, and later on they got on 2 horseback, and they'd go back and forth and sort of plowshare to see if they got anything that was left laying there that was classified.
Between the cover story and the remote location, the cleanup was good enough to keep the crash site secret for decades.
It was described as having been an F-105 crash. Planes crash all the time. We're on military bases, and it went away.
50 years later, aerospace historian Peter Merlin has found the crash site the government tried to erase from history.
Now we're getting into the real debris field. As part of the effort to sanitize the crash site, the larger pieces were cut up with a blowtorch and flown to Area 51 in a big cargo plane.
He searched the desert for years using information from declassified documents.
This secret memorandum was declassified by the CIA. It says all traces of 123 have been removed from the crash scene. My experience with crash sites, however, is that there's always something left. This piece here is part of the wing structure. The A was for the A-12, W for wing, and 667 was the drawing number. This one's from the interior of the cockpit, Skunk Works inspection stamp. This is the impact crater. There's titanium all over the place. Whoa, here's a big chunk. This is some thick titanium. Right here is where the aft fuselage struck the ground. On either side, you'll find a depression from the engine nacelles. There's one right here. I'm standing in the middle of an engine nacelle depression. This would be similar to what would happen today if a secret aircraft from Area 51 were to be lost off range. They would probably implement the same kind of security restrictions. They would also use a cover story.
McCarran Airport, Las Vegas, present day. A private hangar for unmarked jets. Every weekday, workers continue to make the same commute to Area 51 that's taken place since the days of the U-2 and Oxcart. These early programs changed Area 51 into a permanent home for America's black projects.
But you go back and look at all the records, there's never been a flight at Groom Lake. Nothing that was as it seems.
5648, wind calm, LA 190 left, clear for takeoff.
And the mystery continues today. The annual black military budget is more than $50 billion, the highest level in history. But even those who once sacrificed so much for Area 51 are no longer in on the secrets.
I wish I knew what they were doing, but I don't know. I've even heard that Area 51 is a cover story for a much more secret area. I don't know, I can't confirm that either. I have no idea. I wish I knew.
The secrecy and cover-ups continue to fuel rumors.
There are a lot of situations people cannot know that they're not true. So I think that there's been an awful lot of misinformation, but it's been fed by people's natural curiosity. If you don't know what's going on, you might like to find out.
Often, even the wildest speculation contains threads of truth.
They have all these underground chambers they claim we've got out there, and tunnels that reach all the way to Las Vegas. And this is, absolutely nothing like that. At the nuclear test stand, we did go underground because above ground it was radioactive. But nothing at the area. And the myth has been in recent years that we have gained all this speed and technology out of the reverse engineering alien craft. This is the true story. We did reverse engineer things out there. It was a Russian MiG-21. And we got it in 1968, and we tore it apart to see how the Russians built it, and then put it back together, and we flew it.
Even the conspiracy theory that the government staged the moon landing at Area 51 has a slight basis in fact.
It was on the atomic testing grounds. We tested our land rover that we sent to the moon. We tested all of the life support systems. The astronauts came out here and trained in the atomic bomb craters. So that's probably where some of those crazy stories come from.
I think when people signed on to Oxcart or U-2, they agreed that it might never be revealed. And so people said, hey, look, it's kind of a family secret. We're happy to go to the grave with it.
It was an honor, very much an honor to have a job with that much trust put in me as a, you might say, a country boy. A lot of trust was put on people like me that worked out there. A lot of people dedicated their lives. Some families broke up because they never knew what their husbands, if their husbands were going to come home at night. It wasn't just a job.
We were given some task to accomplish, and we believed in it, and we did the best we could. I'm just glad it turned out the way it did.
But when it comes to what went on at Area 51, the only thing we know for sure is that we'll never know everything.
I'm telling you about 5% of what went on.